Hi there. Welcome to Exercise Your Faith on YouTube, Eyfpodcast.com with Dave and
James.
And
Welcome,
James.
everybody.
That's right. And so if you've been following along with us over the last couple of weeks, we started this whole YouTube channel because we wanted to find another way to bring what it is we're doing about God's Word to everybody else.
Right, yeah. Super excited we get to expand the ministry and hopefully reach some more people. So if you like what you see, please hit the subscribe button there in the corner. And of course, if you see or hear anything that you really, really like, share it with someone who needs it.
Right. And if you've been following us along with our regular podcast, you'll know that everything we do is all about our guests. We don't really present the show as about James and I. It's always about our guests. And so we wanted to go ahead and highlight some of the ones that we did that we really enjoyed for lots of different reasons. And we want to talk today and introduce you today to David Winters. And David was our first interview, and there you got the picture there. And Exercise Your Faith is the name of the book, the title of the book. And it's ironic because we weren't going to contact David because we thought, oh my gosh, we're using his title, right, and he's going to end up suing us. And we just didn't know. But we hope that you enjoy David's interview. Again, maybe the second time around if you haven't listened to it before. But David really talks about exercising your faith and has also brought us a whole bunch of
David was the beginning. He was the genesis of this whole thing. And we've just been blessed by that initial interview. And I know that once you listen to it, it'll bless you and it'll bring some golden nuggets to your life.
Yeah, so sit back and enjoy. He's the reason why we've got 130 episodes out there right now. And so, anyway, thank you, David. If you want to buy his book, Exercise Your Faith, there it is. You can buy it on Amazon. We'll link in the show notes.
Welcome to Exercising Your Faith, where we build wisdom in people's lives so they can move forward with purpose in God's plan. Whether your struggle is personal, professional, or spiritual, we look to provide the guidance necessary to reconnect you with your faith and propel you on a path of strength in mind, body, and spirit. It's time to exercise your patience, endurance, and faith with your hosts, Dave and James.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Exercise Your Faith with David and James. Today we're honored to have a special guest with us. His name is David Winters. David is an author. He spent 34 years working for the United States government in various capacities, with the last 10 being with the Department of Homeland Security. David has authored 6 books, including The Accidental Missionary, Sabbatical of the Mind, Taking God to Work, and his latest book, which was just released in February, is the one that caught our eye, which is called Exercising Your Faith, ironically, Defeating the Lies That Men Believe. So, David, I want to go ahead and welcome you to our show. How are you doing today, bud?
Well, it's great to be here, and I'm excited we can have an East Coast, West Coast discussion and probably bring the whole country together in our time together.
You know, if you keep that up, you're going to run for office here pretty soon, and you're going to win because nobody's been able to bring the country together until now.
Well, I'm sure we can do it.
Right.
David, I'll go ahead and jump right in. When we refer to your latest book, how did you come up with the title, Exercise Your Faith?
Well, that's an interesting question. Last year, I read Girl Wash Your Face, which is by Rachel Hollis, and it's a book about the lies that women believe and that had caused her problems in her life. And as I read the book and I saw that it really hit home with a ton of women, I thought, we need one of these for guys. Mm-hmm. I mean, I read all the Christian nonfiction books that I can get my hands on and have time to read. And I thought, this is something that I haven't seen, at least in my mind, for guys. And so I set out to write a book that would address the major problems, the major questions that guys have, but from the format of here's the incorrect information that either is out in the culture or our fathers passed down to us or we just grabbed onto because of our broken humanity, and try to turn that around and provide a little scripture, a lot of examples from people I know and also my own life, and then hopefully some wisdom that will help guys move beyond the lowest common denominator of our flesh into a higher level spiritually.
Right. So, speaking of that, I'd mentioned earlier when we had spoke, your book reads to me like the book of Proverbs. And that's what kind of, struck me there. It has 31 chapters, as Proverbs does, and could be used as a handbook. I mean, I was thinking, like, if somebody wanted to, your book could be used on a daily basis for a month as kind of like a spiritual cleansing or a spiritual, how to do it book if you're a guy. Did this ever occur to you that this was possibly going on? This pattern, did you see it?
Well, one thing I did know is that especially men like to read in shorter chunks.
Yeah.
Perhaps it's because, we're eager to move from task to task or place to place or whatever. But guys don't necessarily all like to sit down and read an entire book at one time. And so I thought it would be great if I sort of had each lie have its own chapter and then also kind of break it off. And if people did want to do it, as sort of a devotional, or if they just felt like, I'm only in this for a couple chapters today, but tomorrow maybe I'll read more or, less or whatever, it would give them that opportunity. So I didn't intentionally make it 31 because there are 31 days in some of them.
Right.
But perhaps God was doing that planning. I was snoozing.
Yeah, not a problem there.
Along those lines, was there a chapter in the book that was harder for you to write than others?
Well, they were all challenging in a way because they do hearken to my own self-discovery, and I tend to overshare, not only in my writing, but if I was with you in person, you would say, like, that's really more than I really need to know about, Dave.
TMI.
Yeah.
But the one that was hardest was really about guys that don't want to go to the doctor, because I talk about my brother and the fact that he always had this feeling that if you stayed away from the doctor, you would stay healthy. And he had married a woman who had the grandparents that lived on a farm and farmed, their whole lives and never went to the doctor, and they lived to be 90 or something. And, he and I shared a problem with high blood pressure. And he was a wrestler, so he was in very good shape when he was young. And then he became a triathlete. So he carried that over into adulthood. But due to an accident, a cow, actually, one of his kids was in 4-H and had a cow. The cow kicked his knee, and he basically had surgery and a year where he couldn't run. Wow. And all of a sudden, he figured he could run again. And when he did, he lost the 30 pounds he had gained over the course of the year in 1 month. And then he passed away of a heart attack sitting on the couch watching TV. So that, still kind of digs at my soul a little bit because it was my brother. He was 8 years older.
Sure.
And, I really leaned on him, as a lot of kids do and guys do with their older brother. And, and I always thought, I'm going to get a lot of time with him when his kids are grown. He's got a family to raise. He's got sports to do with them. I always lived away from Ohio, since I've been an adult. And so, I thought we'll catch up, we'll go fishing, we'll do great stuff once he's closer to retirement, and so am I. And, to be cheated of all that, and I'm sure there's a spiritual angle, and I'm sure he lived all the days God intended him to live.
Right.
But I still, in my flesh, think I got cheated out of that. And it's because of stupidity that, he just wouldn't, like, he felt bad all day the day he was having a heart attack.
Oh.
And yet he didn't get. And finally, when he did have the full-on cardiac arrest, he just blew out the back of his heart so that, they tried to do CPR, and his son was actually a trained junior paramedic, but it didn't help because his heart was, just not working at all. It couldn't be made to work. So.
Wow. That is, that's tough. That's hard. So you mentioned, loving others through writing, which I thought was a real poignant kind of thing to say. Was there someone that inspired you to write and who shared their love as a literary mentor, that kind of pushed you forward in this?
I would say that what really changed my life was, in my first book, I talk about a sabbatical that I took. I took 5 months off, just about 5 years before I retired. And in that time, I got really close to God, and he showed me through a lot of scripture reading other people's books, looking at my fears and all that my assignment at work was to love my employees. It was, as a manager, we had to get the job done, but if I would really love and take care of those employees, they would take care of the work. And from that, I took the bigger lesson that, really whatever we do for the Lord, or whatever we do for a living should really be as unto the Lord. And what that means is he created work for us to take care of each other in the world. He created work so the garbage guy would come by and take away our stinky garbage. The CEO of the company would manage the company so the employees would have a living, could make a living, and the stockholders could make some money, and people would have new linens or new cars or whatever. And each of us has a role to play in this whole big symbiotic universe of work. And, that was what one of their books was about. But because of that, when I took to writing and when I retired, I decided that I was going to dedicate the whole thing to trying to show God's love to other people through whatever I wrote.
Gotcha.
So shifting gears just a little bit, at what point in your life did you decide that you were going to burn all the bridges to the past and go forward as a Christ follower?
Well, that is a question that can be answered better by a lot of other people because my experience doesn't match up with the textbook answer. When I was 13, I had my first encounter with God, and I would say became a born-again believer. And I went to a Billy Graham movie, and afterwards, the music was playing, and they were inviting us to go down front. And I heard this voice say, "You should go down front." And I said, "Wait a minute, are you God?" and believe it or not, the little voice said, "Yes, go down front, and they'll tell you what to do."
Wow!
And so I went down front and got the literature, and I thought, hey, this is the literature they give people on TV. I mean, I really, you teach middle school. That was like a typical junior high kind of response to the whole thing.
Exactly. Sure. Why am I here? Okay, that's why I'm here.
Yeah, but it's like God really showed me then that I needed to be in a relationship with Him. But I went through after that. Drinking, sexual dysfunction, all kinds of adventures, missteps, pits that I found myself in, and even estrangement from God for part of my 20s, where I felt like, He didn't really love me, or He wouldn't have made my life so complicated. My dad was a binge drinker where he would have a lot of alcohol problems, but only for short periods of time. So he'd be stable and good and a great dad. And then all of a sudden, the wheels would come off and he'd lose the car or something.
Right.
And then my sister was graduated from nursing school at the end of the 60s. And so she took with her a big mainlining drug problem. So there was 10 years of, her ODing and us racing off to wherever she was in the hospital. And it was just chaotic for me growing up. And then, and then that got into my mind, and it took a lot of healing. And God led me to different organizations, including AA, to get rid of the drinking. that really changed my life bit by bit and piece by piece. So there wasn't an aha moment in my life where I can say, before then I was a heathen, and after that I was, living the holy life and everything was fabulous. I don't answer that well. The true answer is that, God is making me who he intended me to be day by day.
Right.
And as I continue to work with him and love him, my life gets much, much less complicated and more helpful to others, I think.
And I think that a lot of our listeners can relate to that, because that seems to be the reality of the situation for most people, is that, it's not that one moment in time where things were just they entirely shift. It's kind of a process for most of us.
Yeah.
So one thing I wanted to ask you real fast was, you had a line in your, I guess you call it the preface of the book, and I don't know, it really kind of struck me, and I just wanted to see if this is your line, and I think it is based on talking with you, and it's that wash with the soap of wisdom, and you will smell better inside and out. Now that is as simple as you can get. That is like, if all of us could just grab a hold of that line and live it, things would be so much better in our lives. And I just wanted to see, did you come up with that line, or was that one that a grandpa gave you or something?
Yeah, no, actually that is mine. And, I was working on analogies to, I thought, I should fix the title that's close to Girl Wash Your Face, so people who have read that book and would be interested can see the parallels. And then I did test marketing on Guy Wash Your Armpits or other choices, that were probably equally bad. And I thought, that is not the way to go with the title, because everyone laughed at the title, but I'm not sure anyone would have bought it. But on the other hand, the analogy is still very true, that, we need to have the wisdom of God's word in our life regularly and spend those hours with him when no one else is around, so that we can be not only smarter, but also that we can interact in a more loving and better way with other people when we do get together with them.
Right. So you'd have kind of a sweet aroma. We don't want to come off as being, stinky when we interact with folks. So yeah, it makes perfect sense. I love the line. So I just wanted to make sure you knew that was a darn good line. I liked it.
Well, use it as a pull quote.
There you go. Absolutely.
All right. So another question here for you. What do you think is the key thing necessary to bring a Christian to the realization that they need to change or seek help?
Well, speaking on behalf of all men everywhere in the world, I would say that it's when we start hurting.
Right.
Yeah.
Men react well to pain. And when something starts going wrong, whether it's a relationship, work, our physical health, that's when we start to get serious about change. And we realize it's like the mirror gets held up to us and we say oh, dude, you've gained weight. You really got to do something about this.
Right.
And I really, that's a big thing. And it's sad that we're like that we can't, get it a little more easily. But I really think pain is a big wake up call for us.
Right. So let me ask you this on a sideline. When was the last time you asked for directions and you stopped and asked for directions? Because that's something I would never do. I struggle with that.
Well, I have a GPS, so that's
there you go.
Yeah.
All right. So
Problem solved.
GPS must have been created for man. Yes, so that we don't have to ask for directions. So cool. All right. So as we're kind of moving in here, what's the best advice as a Christian you have ever received?
I think it's to have a quiet time with the Lord, and that's just because given to my own device, my flesh can tell me what to do, and I can decide to watch way too much TV or spend too much time on Facebook or do all kinds of other things that, may be relaxing, but they may not be that good for me. And just to be able to start my day with God and to feel like He's in control of what's going on. And when I started extending that to work, like when I got to my office, just spending like 5 minutes in prayer for the day, but also specific meetings I was going to have, relationship issues I was having at work where, like an employee and I weren't getting along that well or something,
Right.
That changed everything. And I guess a lot of times we as Christians just don't realize what we have in the Lord. He's willing to be totally involved in every part of our life if we'll give it to Him and let Him have a chance. So
Right.
that is probably advice.
That's a big nugget.
So now that you're writing, it sounds like is your primary, focus. Do you have any new books in the works for Christians?
Well, I always have new books. That's the thing about writers. There's, a lot of ideas. And a friend of mine very early in the writing said, ideas are a dime a dozen. Great manuscripts are as rare as gold.
Yeah, makes sense.
It's really
Yeah.
easy to come up with the idea. It's hard to actually sit down and write. But the next book that I'm going to put out, and it's several months away, I write both fiction and nonfiction. We haven't really talked about my fiction because it wasn't on the subject of this interview, but I wrote an Uber murder mystery called Driver Confessional as my first fiction book.
Right, I
And
saw
I followed
that one.
that up with, then I followed up with Stock Car Inferno, which was also kind of a guy focused, even though it's a woman driver, it's really a murder mystery around a Christian lawyer and a driver who is like a NASCAR driver. And so my next one, though, is also a mystery, and it's called A Baby's Right to Choose.
Oh.
And it's about an abortion doctor whose daughter becomes a Christian, and they're starting to have all kinds of discontent in the home. And he kind of flips out.
Yeah.
And so the book is about, his journey in trying to grasp his mental health in the face of, people questioning his morality. And so that's coming out later this year.
Okay, yeah, because you had a real, that one story that you have in Exercise Your Faith where your two friends went through the multiple abortions was really, a tough read and a tough read for all the right reasons. But it was nice to see that they got back together at the end. So God provided restoration even through all those things.
Yeah. And, interestingly, they're from the Pasadena area on your coast.
Okay.
And basically, they're married and they had a child of their own. She had multiple children with their first husband before they divorced. But he is really struggling right now with Parkinson's.
Oh, wow.
And so anybody could, say a prayer for him. That would just be really fantastic because he's a great guy. We've talked several times on the phone. And, it's like any of us, that's a major diagnosis to
sure.
get.
Yeah.
And, it affects not only your body, but a lot of times there's early onset dementia and things you can struggle with too. So, as a 60-year-old guy myself, and he's about my age, that's so young to be wondering, gee, is my body going to hold up much longer,
Right.
and my mind too.
Yeah, depression
Yeah,
kind of
but,
sets in, I'm sure.
Yeah, and abortion is a big topic for me, and it's not because I want to, make anybody else feel bad or make people regret choices they made a long time ago or something. But we have as Christians a love of life and a desire to propagate life, and anything I could say that would help people think before they take, maybe the easy way out or a choice that's not healthy for them mentally and physically for the future, I'd like to be able to do that.
Okay, cool.
So now we like to provide resources for our listeners. If you had one resource that you could share with our listeners to help them, what would it be?
Well, I would say my website, which is named after my first book, Sabbatical of the Mind, and it's www.sabbaticalofthemind.net. And on that website, I have a blog. So I try to write about topics that I think would help the average Christian. And then occasionally I introduce another author that I think is delving into an area that's important, but not necessarily one I deal with. Sure. So I would say that's it. That's my website would be a great place to go.
Perfect. Cool. And I don't want to inundate you with folks, but I've got to say you are very approachable. If somebody has a question, definitely they can reach you there. And you proved time and again that you get back to folks, which is one of my pet peeves. And I'm so excited to hear from you. So thanks on that. And again, I hope you don't get 1,000 people requesting your presence. But if you do, what a great problem to have.
Yeah. And let me just say too, as writers, we write alone. So when someone sends us any feedback, it takes like maybe 20 seconds or 30 seconds to write it, to read an email. And that can be all the encouragement in the world to someone who's, basically trying to listen to God and do it on their own, but they really need some feedback. And I got the coolest letter from a guy that was living in his car in LA. It was an email through my website. And he said that he struggled with anxiety, the way I describe in my first book, Sabbatical of the Mind. And because he read that book, he felt so encouraged that he was able to get a job again, and that he was waiting like his first or second check so he could actually move into a place. And to know that you have a little bit of impact on someone, that's like why we do it.
Well, that's more than a little bit of impact. I mean, that's awesome. I mean, to be able to say at the end of the day that, that was the end result of your conversation, not only with God, because God helped you to write the book, but then with him, and to know that happened and that thing came together. That's great. And so one final question here as we kind of wrap up, and it kind of is going to tie everything together. And I think you'll appreciate this is, lastly, if you could do it all over again and arrive at a different spot, would you?
In my flesh, I might say yes, but my spiritual side says no. And it's based on an old song that one of the lines in it, it's called Long and Winding Road, which is very easily confused with the Beatles song. But it's not
I was just popped in my head.
And it says, because I went by Calvary, I know I'm traveling right. And I would say anyone's life who's gone by the cross and has been impacted by it, they're on the right road, no matter how painful, crazy up and down roller coaster it's been. You're traveling right, because eventually your streets will turn to gold, and that's going to make all the difference.
That's an awesome line. Yeah. You gotta write that one down and put it in a picture frame and put that up on your site, because that's a great way to encapsulate things. So one last thing before we wrap things up, is there an Instagram or a Facebook place that we could link for you to as well to connect with folks in addition to your website?
Yeah. My Facebook site is author David L. Winters. Okay. So you can find on Facebook. In fact, if you just type in author David L. Winters, I will pop right onto your computer and into your heart, I'm sure.
Well, hey, it sounds like a plan. What about Instagram? Do you have an Instagram account?
I don't, because I'm a dinosaur, and dinosaurs are little.
So you got that short arm syndrome going there. Can't quite reach the keys for Instagram. I get it. All right. Well, David, let me tell you, this has been an absolute pleasure to be able to chat with you and to be able to talk about your book. Your book is great. And I'm so thankful that you didn't pull any punches when you told your stories, because you can tell when somebody's faking it, and you can tell when somebody's just bringing it, and your stories bring it. And I'm sure that's going to resonate with all your readers.
Well, thanks. And I really love you guys. I love your heart that you're doing this podcast. And I'm sure it's going to be very successful with God blessing it. And anything I can do to help you promote that, I'll definitely tell my folks about it, on my social media. But, everybody should tune in and follow you and like you and all that stuff.
That would be awesome. That would be great. So anyhow, we're going to go ahead and close now. So Dave, is there any prayer requests that you have that James and I and everybody else can maybe pray for in addition to your friend with Parkinson's?
Only that I am on the road in the next month going to Buffalo, New York, and 2 spots in Iowa for conferences. So you can just pray for safe travel and that I'll be able to love some people there too.
Absolutely.
Awesome. We can go ahead and do that. Yeah, you betcha. All right, David. So hang on for just a second. But folks, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you very much for listening today. Everybody have a great day. God bless.
We appreciate you joining us on this episode of Exercising Your Faith, but your faith workout doesn't stop here. Be sure to head to Eyfpodcast.com for more information and resources on today's episode by signing up for our mailing list to receive messages of hope and faith to keep you moving forward with purpose in God's plan. That's available on Eyfpodcast.com. Until next time, God bless. We appreciate you joining us on this episode of Exercising Your Faith, but your faith workout doesn't stop here. Be sure to head to Eyfpodcast.com for more information and resources on today's episode by signing up for our mailing list to receive messages of hope and faith to keep you moving forward with purpose in God's plan. That's available on Eyfpodcast.com. Until next time, God bless.